Have you ever struggled getting connected to your Azure SQL database? In this episode, you'll learn all about how to break down the different issues and how to get back to being connected faster. This week on Data Exposed. Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed. Today, I'm joined by Subbu. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure, Anna. I'm Subbu Kandhaswamy. I'm from the Azure SQL DB supportability team, and I work on customer escalations and also work on improving tools and operations for our SQL CSS engineers to improve best customer experience.
Awesome, cool. You're the perfect person because we're going to be talking about things people sometimes struggle with, and that's understanding connectivity issues. So can you take us through kind of all the things we should be aware of when we might hit these connectivity issues?
Sure, Anna. So customers go through multiple challenges, and it always becomes an issue of understanding where the problem starts. And we will go through some of those, and then we'll also cover a little bit on connectivity issues, network issues that customer would face, and how they can efficiently handle them. So when it comes to understanding a problem, we need to know where the issue is occurring, whether this is happening on the client side, whether login failures, or if they're having an issue specific to the network layer. Most of the time, the error messages the customer would receive will tell exactly where the problem is, and that's the best place to start with so that we spend focused time on the right area.
Makes sense.
And if I'm having issues related to accessing my database, the best place to start with is the Azure Resource Health Plate. And the Health Plate provides the status of your database, showing, my database is available, right? And is my database has gone through a different states, whether it's a warning or it's a critical, right? Understanding the warning issues and the critical issues gives us an idea of whether I should take action to escalate it if I continue to have this issue, or I should be ignoring those warnings and move forward, right? And coming to the SQL side of connectivity issues, we often get customers saying, hey, I'm not able to reach my database, right? Because there's an unavailability issue. And majority of the time, these issues are transient, meaning it goes through a reconfiguration process during a planned or unplanned events, and it takes only less than 60 seconds. Most of the time, it's under 10 seconds. In many situations, it might go a little longer, but it's still a transient behavior, and we should be able to handle it efficiently, right? And when it comes to handling the transient behaviors, we always recommend customers to use the retry logic. And the challenge is, in some cases, customer uses retry logic in many situations, but they come back and say, I'm having still a challenge, not able to, I'm still seeing the error messages every now and then. What's going on, right? Majority of the situations, they did not follow the rules that needs to be applied or the principles, right? A minimum 5 seconds interval between the retries are critical, because otherwise we'll end up having a situation called blocking period. In a connection pool environment, if I'm hitting an error message, right, it takes at least 5 seconds. In that 5 seconds window, if I'm going to retry my connection, it's going to fail, right? And if I'm going to retry, the subsequent error messages plus the error message I'm going to get in the initial time, it's going to compound, and up to 60 seconds, I will be getting an exception saying that I'm not able to reach the database, right? Well, we should be mindful of applying those rules, and that way we can have handle those transient behaviors efficiently. I can walk you through a quick retry logic demo to show how my application able to handle those transient behaviors.
Cool.
Here I am. This is my application which connects to my database and pulls the simple select query results from my sys objects. And in this case, I'm setting my number of attempts to connect is 4 times and the 5-second interval. That way I'm ensuring that every 5 seconds my connection retries, right?
Nice. And what I understand while this is kicking off is that we have these samples available for people to try.
Yes. So we do have samples for various platforms that our customers can make use of it. In this case, I intentionally failed it for my connection, and it waited for 5 seconds, and then made a retry, and then able to successfully deliver the results for this database. It's fairly simple, and it's available for all the customers to use it directly from our public documentation. And Coming back to this, so we also experience non-transient behaviors, like similar to the availability issues that we have seen at transient. Sometimes this can also become non-transient, where we lose connections for a few minutes or a few hours, right? Primarily, it could be related to the issue the customer, or the issue that database went through. It could be gone through a long transaction while this transient behavior occurs. And the chances are it takes a longer time for performing the recovery operation. So longer the recovery operation, longer the availability issue customer is going to face, right? And in other scenarios, they also hit the request limit reached, where the request limits assigned or for each service tiers, they might hit the threshold limit and they have this issue. And the recommendation is to actually scale up the database to the higher service tier. And also, we have an option to go and check whether this behavior is happening by using a dedicated admin console.
Okay.
Right? And the dedicated admin console allows us to connect to the database despite the limit has been reached, and only one dedicated admin console connection is available for us to log in and check in the database. And sometimes we also see customers saying, hey, I'm trying to connect to my dedicated admin console, but I'm still having challenges connecting to it. Chances are they already have a session open.
I see.
And then they're trying to connect it again. And the solution is to go and ensure that they don't have active sessions and connect to the database. I can walk you through a quick demo on how the dedicated admin console works. And here I am connecting to my Azure SQL Database. So it connected to my Azure SQL database from my dedicated admin console. And if, in this case, if I wanted to test what are my, whether my database is going through this session limit, all I have to do is run the query to see whether my max work percentage is 100%. So this will allow us to say, okay, I'm hitting the limits every now and then, and make necessary recommendations for that. In other scenario, if the DAC limit issues, I already have a connection existed for that connection. If I'm going to make another connection here, assuming that I don't have a connection open, this would be most time customers would experience a connectivity failure, right? So this does not mean the database is not available. This means there is an existing connection somewhere that user has to close it and then attempt the connection again to check it. And moving on, we also see challenges where the customers are not able to read the exceptions they receive, because sometimes it could be an issue related to a performance, but not looking into it, saying, oh, I'm having a connectivity issues, right? Understanding the error message and the exceptions, in this case, you can check the class, whether it's a SQL connection class or it's a SQL command class, would tell us whether this is a performance-related issues or a connection timeout issues, right? And then take necessary steps on those.
Right, that's key.
Coming to the network connectivity issues, right? We do see where customer experience connections getting dropped, right? Or the network components, network layer dropping the connection for customers. One of the common situation we would see is where the idle TCP connection failures, right? The one of the networking devices dropping the connection. And in some situations, our gateway, SQL gateway, drops the connection if there is no query request come in for 30 minutes from that specific connection. The recommendation for those scenarios is to, for the TCP level, you need to configure the keep alive session in the registry. And then, for the gateway layer, related connection drops, it always happens for proxy connections. So using a redirection connection policy allows us to eliminate that completely. So that is why we always recommend customers to use the redirect connection policy to reduce the number of hops every time it goes through the gateway versus directly connecting to the database, right? Just to give a high level on the connection policy, so we offer two sets of connection policy, the proxy and the redirect connection policy by design. By default, proxy connects from outside, and from within Azure, if you're connecting to your SQL database, it's the redirect, but it's configurable. And in many situations, we always recommend customers to use redirect connection policy for the improved performance. And then we also see communication link failures on the network side, right? So where customers come back and say something went wrong in between, the client and the server. So we get this situation where customers not using the updated drivers, right? And that's when they see these issues called forcibly closed by remote host. The recommendation for this situation is to have an updated driver which would support the TLS 1.2 version that is default for the SQL database. We do also have an option for customers to use the lower version of TLS. They can change it, and we have steps for that, but it is not recommended.
Right.
We always recommend to use the updated version of the driver. Also wanted to quickly talk about this connectivity checker tool, which is a tool that allows us to check end-to-end connection. And it's available as part of our public documentation. It's a GitHub-based, it's a PowerShell-driven tool. I already ran this tool for my application, for my database, And what it does, it performs an end-to-end connection. It checks for your certificates, it checks for your gateway connections, and then it goes and hits your master database, user database, and then also performs a pre-login checks. And in addition, it also allows us to capture the network trace for us, right? So this gives us a clear idea of where my connection is failing. And if I'm not sure what to do, I can do the network capture and give it to the support team to handle this efficiently. And with that, I just want to conclude, whenever you have a connectivity issue or situations, first identify the problem, what is happening, where it's happening, more importantly, whether it's a transient behavior or not, how to handle the transient if it's a transient behavior, and what are the different errors I get, how I can read those error messages efficiently, and and then using the redirection connection policy to avoid some of those communication failures that we have, and also using the connectivity checker tool to understand where the connection is failing, and then report to us in case they need additional support for networking side.
Awesome. Wow, Subbu, you showed us so much. I personally learned so much about connectivity, so I really appreciate you coming on the show. To all our viewers, I'm sure you learned a lot as well. I might bookmark this video in case you face any issues. You know exactly how to go about, not wasting time on the wrong thing. For our viewers, we're going to put links to all of those recommended links in the description, so be sure to check out the description to learn more about these connectivity issues and spend less time on the wrong things, essentially. Thanks again so much for coming on the show. To our viewers, if you like this episode, go ahead, give it a like, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think or what you learned or how you use this video to get back to being connected. And we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.